Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle real estate market update for May 2021. The Seattle housing market continues to be one of the hottest housing markets in the country, and when we think about Seattle, when we think about the region itself, that's where we're seeing most of the heat. A lot of the surrounding suburbs nearby Seattle are seeing the most significant growth right now. The city of Seattle itself is still relatively hot, but we're not seeing quite as much of the competition and the craziness in Seattle as we're seeing just outside. If you're new to these Seattle real estate market updates, every single update I share a story from a client in the previous month. I share the stats, and the stats are going to be from the previous month. So the stats in this video are going to be from April 2021, and I'll share some applications or predictions for the future here in the Seattle housing market. This month, we're going to feature the Crom family, and they listed their Shoreline rental property with us. We listed this home for $675,000, which, according to the comparables, seemed to be a good list price. It was slightly aggressive, but maybe $25,000 aggressive. On the offer review date, which was only 5 days later, we received 11 offers on this house. And this house that was listed for $675,000 sold for $940,000. That's almost 40% over the asking price. And this house also closed in 10 days. So the lender closed the property in 10 days. There were absolutely no contingencies on the contract, and my client got a lot more money than they were expecting. Congratulations, Crom family, on the awesome outcome here. And if you're watching this, I think this story really sums up where we're at in the Seattle area housing market. Now, not every house is selling 39+% over asking price, but I've had two in the last month and a half sell for more than 30% over the asking price. So if you're wanting to be competitive in this market, home buyers, you need to be aggressive. That's going to be on the price. It's also going to be on the terms. And if you're somebody who's thinking about selling, that's the situation right now. We're seeing 20% is a very common amount over the asking price. And again, a couple in the last month, as a listing agent, we've had over 30% above the asking price. So if you're thinking about making a move, downsizing, or moving out of the area, this would be at least great time to consider selling your house. All right, moving on to the Northwest MLS stats from April 2021. I know that's why many of you watch these videos on a monthly basis. The city of Seattle, we'll start with median sales price, had a median sales price new record high, $855 last month. And that's up almost 7%, 6.9% year over year. The numbers, as we go through them, I want you to have in the back of your mind that the beginning of the COVID shutdowns happened right about now. So we're gonna start to see it reflected in the stats. It was March, and so those would be sales closing in April. And then the next couple months, we're gonna see a little bit of a decline and an increase in the prices. So there was a little bit of a V-shaped housing market in the spring last year, which is abnormal, but that's what we saw. And I think as we go through these stats, some of them are gonna be severely inflated, but the median sales prices, interestingly enough, there wasn't a huge variation, at least on the April numbers. We'll see a little bit more of a decline in May and June, but the housing prices right now are significantly up year over year, and they hadn't really dipped yet. If we look at some other surrounding suburbs around the Seattle area, we have Bellevue at a median sales price of $1.64 million, and that is 49.8% up year over year. It takes the record here, at least of the cities that I'm looking at right now. And last year they were at 1.095. That's a significantly larger number that you're paying to buy a house in Bellevue right now than you were paying at the same time last year. And a few of the other suburbs here, if we look at, let's look at Shoreline. I just mentioned the Shoreline house that we listed, $785,000 median sales price, up 23.6% year over year. If we go a little bit farther to Linwood in Snohomish County, $730,000 median sales price. Last year, the median sales price was $550,000. Let that sink in. That's huge, crazy. 32.7% up. And if we look at Edmonds, again, just into Snohomish County where I personally live, median sales price last month was $875, and that's up 21.1%. So if we look at the suburbs, we're seeing in the 20s of an increase, 20% plus increase in a lot of the suburbs year over year. If we look at Seattle, we're looking at 6.9. So it illustrates what I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that the Seattle housing market itself, the city of Seattle, is still increasing in value. But if we look at the surrounding suburbs, that's where a lot of the explosive exponential growth is starting to happen. So why are prices shooting up? I think that's important to touch on here really quick. And the biggest reason the prices have been jumping is because of the low inventory and the high amount of demand. So that's all together, right? You've got not enough houses for the buyers, and you also have really, really low interest rates. And the interest rates, interestingly, are now down below 3% again on average, according to Freddie Mac's primary mortgage survey that they do every single week. And that is continuing to keep money cheap and allowing people to continue to increase the prices on their offers. If we look at the Seattle area, and I'll give you a little sampling here of a few different cities, not everyone, but just a couple. We look at Seattle, 6 days on market's the median days on market. If we look at Shoreline, we're looking at 6 days, median days on market. If we look at Linwood, we're looking at 5 days. And if we look at Edmonds, we're looking at 6 days. All right, so we're seeing houses sell really fast. And this number would be faster if people were accepting offers early, before their offer review dates. And a few do, but most people wait until their offer review date because they want to be the one to get 30+% above the asking price, right? If we look at the new listings number, another number that would help us decide what the inventory looks like, new listings are up 88.4% in the city of Seattle. And in Shoreline, they're up 86%. Linwood, 69.6%, and then 68.9% in Edmonds. So this is the stat where I think it's most inflated when you have fewer houses coming on the market last year because of COVID. Right in the beginning, people are like, what is going on? So in April last year, there were fewer houses. So these numbers are a little bit skewed as far as the percentages go. But when we look at the 1,283 houses that came on the market in April in Seattle, that's one of the largest numbers of houses that have come on the market in a single month in the last 10 years. It's right up there, top 5. So we haven't seen, aside from a few spikes, we haven't seen that many houses coming on the market since back in like 2007, 8, 9, 10, okay? So a lot of houses have been coming on the market. It's not that houses aren't coming on the market, it's that they are all selling. And this is the stat we're gonna look at here. If we look at pending sales, right? So a pending sale is a house that goes under contract in a month, and typically those homes don't close until the following month. So those would be closings in May. So in next month's update, we'll be talking about closings in May. But if we look at the pending sales, we had 1,091 pending sales in Seattle. And if we think about how many houses are coming on a weekly basis, a couple hundred at least at this pace, that's the homes maybe that came on the last couple days right before the new month that are going to be on the stats for May. So really what's happening is there are a bunch of houses coming on the market still. So it's not that they aren't coming on, but there are so many buyers that they're just gone. Houses are gone. And so that's creating an inventory shortage. So in Seattle, we have, look at this, 0.8 months of supply. So 0.8 months of homes on the market are available. So what that means is if no houses come on the market in the next 3 weeks, we're gonna be out of houses, okay? If we look at Shoreline also 0.8 months of supply, Linwood 0.5 months of supply, Edmonds 0.7 months of supply. So if we're looking at King County, Snohomish County, and we could look at countless other cities in King and Snohomish County, we're really, really, really short on inventory. But it's not because houses aren't coming on the market. It's just because there are so many buyers. So what is the result? What is the result of all these buyers and not enough houses? It's continually increasing prices. So if we look at Seattle, for example, houses in Seattle last month sold on average 7.3% above the asking price. If we look at Shoreline, 11.6 6% above asking price. Bellevue, 11.4% above asking price. Linwood, look at this, 14.6% above the asking price. And Edmonds, again, my hometown, 13.1% above asking price. So we're seeing prices every single month. Think about this for a second. If every time an agent and a seller price their house, they're looking at recent sales. And a lot of times they'll ask other agents, what did the house sell for? And even if it's under contract and it hasn't closed, to get an idea for how much a house is worth. And ultimately people buy on comparison. So it's called a comparative market analysis, or a CMA. All right. So when you're pricing a house, you're looking at what have other houses sold for. Most people won't push the price to the very top of a multiple offer situation, because usually there's one buyer or two buyers willing to pay that price. The rest of them are all willing to pay a little bit lower price. So that's why you see people pricing it a little bit lower maybe than what some of the other ones have sold for, because they don't want to attract one buyer. They want to try to get that same multiple offer frenzy. But what's happening is you're slowly, every month, you're seeing, well, 15, 20% over this new number, and then another, and then another, and you just keep seeing the prices climbing. So the biggest driver of that is going to be that there aren't enough houses for the buyers, and the buyers are all competing for a low amount of inventory. And that's what's continuing to drive the prices, along with the low interest rates. So a few risk factors, if you're a buyer, to be considering: what happens if a whole bunch of new houses come on the market? Well, there's still a lot of buyers. So I don't think a bump in amount of homes on the market is necessarily going to change anything, at least in the near future. Now, if we had a substantial bump of new houses coming on the market, that would be, we could call it a flood of inventory. That might change things. But at this point right now, we have near record numbers, at least looking back at the stats over the last 15 years, 16 years. We're right at some of the highs of new houses coming on the market. So again, it's not that we don't have a lot of houses on the market. I think the biggest risk factor, if we want to look at it, is probably going to be the buyers. What if interest rates go up and there are fewer buyers that can afford to pay the prices? Or what if buyers are getting tired and they don't want to compete anymore? That's going to stop the continual crazy growth. But at this point, more inventory, it will change things. But I don't know if we're going to see so much more inventory than we're already seeing, because we're already seeing a lot of new homes on the market. If we look back at maybe 2015, 16, 17, some of that data, there are a lot less houses coming on the market and there are fewer buyers. But that's also another really low inventory market that we had, but it looked different. This one has a bunch of houses, but it has even more buyers. So at this point, as a seller, you have the opportunity to cash in, if you want to, on this crazy frenzy and be part of the game. You get the opportunity, there's no guarantees, but you get the opportunity to essentially dictate the price and terms in your negotiation. It's a seller's market. You're in control. And there are legitimate possibilities of getting a significantly larger amount for your house, maybe than what it's ultimately worth. But a house is worth what a buyer and a seller are willing to agree on. So if you're willing to sell your house to them and they're willing to pay the price, there you go. As a buyer though, I think you're competing right now with a lot of people. And unless you're willing to pay the price and remove contingencies in your contract, essentially a contingency is your opportunity to back out and protect yourself in the contract. Unless you're willing to pay the price and be aggressive, which there are plenty of buyers like that. If you're not one of those people though, this is a tough market to be competitive in, no matter how much you're willing to offer on price, because there are other people that are willing to be more aggressive on the terms. So price is important, but the terms and the contingencies in your contract are also really important to help you position yourself for a purchase. Another little rabbit trail for buyers. I've had people asking, like, what's going to happen to the market? Is this the end? Is the market going to crumble? Are we in a bubble? I would argue that we're not in a bubble. If you're watching this video and you find yourself in a position where you're thinking about either buying or selling and you want some more input, I'd love to have a conversation and bring some value to your situation. Again, I'm just super appreciative that you, if you're watching this, made it all the way to the end of the video here. So if this video brought you some value, I have a couple favors to ask you. Number one, please give this video a thumbs up and maybe consider dropping a comment if you want to contribute a little bit to this video. And number two, please consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more content like this. And it also helps other people see it as well.